Welcome to this Whole Life Action Hour. I am Ocean Robbins, your host, and today our focus is on unlocking your body's superpowers. Did you know that dark chocolate could actually help repair blood vessels, or that green tea can help reduce inflammation and prevent extra blood vessels from growing and developing into cancer, or that the right foods might even be able to help reduce the prevalence and severity of long COVID? A stunning new body of research on angiogenesis, microbiome, regeneration, and DNA protection is being pioneered and promoted by Dr. William Li. This body of work is showing how food and lifestyle can unlock your body's powerful ability to build and fight disease. So let me introduce our guest today, Dr. William Li. He is a world-renowned physician, a scientist, an angiogenesis expert, and the head of the Angiogenesis Foundation. He is the New York Times best-selling author of Eat to Beat Disease, the new science of how your body can heal itself. And he is the founder of the Eat to Beat initiative. Dr. Li is the author of more than 100 scientific publications in journals like Science, the New England Journal of Medicine, and The Lancet. His TED Talk, Can We Eat to Starve Cancer?, has been viewed more than 11 million times. Dr. William Li, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Ocean. It's always a pleasure to be here and to speak with you.
Oh, I just love your work, and I'm so glad. You're one of these unique people that bridges doing the research with also publicizing it. A lot of researchers are so caught in the science that the lay public can't understand what they're talking about. And then a lot of promoters don't really understand the science because they haven't been there. And you're one of these unique humans that really crosses the worlds.
Yeah, I mean, that does give me a very different and a deeper view on some of the things that we talk about. But the other thing it actually allows me to do is to, really tell people what we know and what we don't know. I always tell people when you're talking to a scientist, the way to tell that you're speaking to a real scientist is when we're the people that actually say that we don't know everything. So we are able to kind of just tease apart the things that actually have been discovered versus the new questions that we actually are asking.
Well, knowing what we know and what we don't know is so fundamental, right? And curiosity, we think of it in our culture like it's a bad thing, like you should have all the answers if you're an authoritative expert. But actually, curiosity is what enables us to learn new things, isn't it?
Right. Well, I remember a colleague of mine gave a TED Talk, and he basically said that most people in the public feel that scientists, when they get together, must spend all their time talking about like it's kind of like a geek out of all the facts that they know. But in fact, when we scientists get together, we spend almost all of our time talking about the questions that we have yet to answer. And so that's really an important distinction. But it's really, we do know quite a lot. I think we know enough about some of the principles about food as medicine that actually can help people live better lives right here, right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we go any further, I want to be very clear about one thing. What you're hearing today is not medical advice. We are sharing coaching and our own best insights. But of course, you should always consult with a qualified healthcare professional regarding your specific medical issues and needs. That said, you're going to learn a lot today. This is a project today of Whole Life Club, which is Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community. This week, we've hosted action hours with Brenda Davis on Saturday, with Dr. William Li today, with Rich Roll coming up on Wednesday. And Whole Life Club paid members get access to our entire library of action hours, plus transcripts and the chance to submit questions in advance. They also get weekly recipes and videos and lots more. If you stay on to the end, after we're done with Dr. Li today, I will tell you more about Whole Life Club and how you can join in with a special opportunity only available this week. But now we want to focus on this broadcast. So let's dive right in, Dr. Li. I've got a lot of questions for you. First of all, your approach to beating lifestyle disease is unlike the common approach taken by a lot of healthcare providers who often focus on what to avoid or eliminate. For example, if your cholesterol is high, you might be told to avoid red meat. If you have arthritis, you might be told to avoid fried foods, or to control blood sugar, you might be told to avoid sugar. And all of this may have value, of course. But Will, it seems to me that your approach is more focused on what to add Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, there are so many voices out there that actually already tell people what to avoid that I don't feel like there's much room or need to actually add another voice, including mine. Where I think where the opportunities are really to talk about what foods you should add. And, human nature abhors deprivation, right? So if I tell you, don't eat this, don't eat that, you're a bad person here, number one, it's a discouragement, makes people feel bummed out. And secondly, I can tell you this is true for me too. If somebody tells me not to do something, my brain naturally goes, well, maybe I'll just do it one more time. Okay. And so for me, it's sort of, I feel it's really important. And the opportunity is to align the things that you really enjoy, the foods that you want to eat with your health, with their health benefits, with your health needs. That's the perfect kind of equation. If what you eat, what you like to eat, serves your health interests. So that's really what I set myself out to do, is to look for those foods that people already like to eat, because I think there's enough voices out there. It doesn't take much to look up all the things you should avoid eating, as you just mentioned.
I remember when I was learning to ride a bike, I was heading a couple days out into my adventures. I was heading towards a pothole and I saw it in the road in front of me. And I was obsessed with it. I was like, don't hit the pothole, don't hit the pothole. And of course I was staring at the pothole, and guess where my bike went, So it's
Right
like sometimes, that law of attraction is kind of powerful. When you focus on what you don't want, you all too often get more of it, right? So if people are obsessed, or I've been doing the Wim Hof breathing technique recently where you don't breathe for a period of time. If I obsess and I can't breathe, then my body goes into fear, and then I desperately need to breathe. Whereas if I can just go into a state of calm and peace and focus on that, then I can go a lot longer between breaths.
Here's another analogy. Think about, some of your viewers, probably most of them haven't had this experience, but if you were to learn how to fly an airplane, you want your flight instructor to tell you what to do to fly successfully. You don't want somebody to be whispering in your ear the whole time what you shouldn't do because you're going to crash, right? And so this is really, to me, we're all trying to fly. We're all trying to get up in the air, to get as high as we can, to really enjoy what's out there. And we want to be able to land safely. And to do that, I think, it's easier for people to kind of get to master their own destiny, to get the skills they need, and to be able to take off and land safely if they're hearing about what they want to eat.
Absolutely. I mean, in our work, we put out a lot of recipes. We focus on what you want to cook. We don't say, here's a bad recipe you shouldn't make, right? So anyway, I love the concept. Willie, you've conducted some groundbreaking research on the field of angiogenesis and anti-angiogenesis, and you've helped a lot of people understand what this means. For those of our audience who aren't among the 11 million people who've seen your TED Talk and they aren't familiar with your research, can you explain what angiogenesis and anti-angiogenesis are and why this research is so important?
Yeah, the term angiogenesis, because I'm an angiogenesis researcher, sounds kind of complicated at the, when you first hear it, but actually it's very simple. Break it down. Angio is blood vessels. Genesis is growth. It's really, angiogenesis is how the body grows blood vessels. And the reason that's important is that because in you and me and everybody listening and watching this, we've got 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels packed inside our body. 60,000 miles. That is so extensive. You were to pull out all the blood vessels and line them up end to end, you'd form a line that would encircle the earth twice. Now, these are the highways and byways for our entire body, because these blood vessels bring the oxygen that we breathe and the nutrients that we eat to every cell and every organ. And that's how important angiogenesis is. And we want to have just the right number of blood vessels to keep us alive and thriving. Too few is like having bulb patches in your lawn. You got to actually grow more grass. Too many is like having an overgrowth of weeds. You got to mow that down. And so the body is able to actually get just the right amount.
Got it. And so anti-angiogenic foods in general, though, are, I guess you could say they're like lawnmowers, and they help to keep in check, particularly cancer cells, right? Because they're able to nip in the bud whenever a blood vessel is feeding excessively a cell that shouldn't be getting all that blood. Is that right? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I started my research career out, is as a cancer researcher. And the thing that was really amazing that I learned is that we're forming cancers in our body all the time, even as children. And that's the reason. The reason is that we've got 40 trillion cells in our body, and they are replicating, they're reproducing every single day. That's why we're still around tomorrow, is because our cells have replaced themselves. And the way they do this is by copy pasting each other. Okay. So imagine if you had to do copy paste 40 trillion times. You're going to make some mistakes. In fact, our body makes about 10,000 of these copy paste mistakes every single day. And each of these little mistakes, if they add up, and the little mistakes are mutations, and those mutations can turn normal healthy cells into little microscopic cancers. Now, microscopic cancers can only grow so large without having a blood vessel feeding them. And this is about how large they can grow. The tip of a pen, about 2 to 3 millimeters in diameter. That's the size. Okay. Can't hurt you, can't spread. You'll never know you actually have it. It's like a pimple. If you saw the pimple in your face in the mirror in the morning, you might pay attention to it. But if it formed on your back, you would never know. So our body's filled with these microscopic cancers. But as long as these cancers cannot be fed by a blood supply, extra blood vessels, all right, that's as big as they'll ever get until your immune system wings by and destroys them. Now, I can tell you, as a researcher in the lab, when we allowed tiny microscopic tumors to be devoid of their blood vessels, we inhibit those blood vessels, they won't grow. They just stay there. They're kind of like stuck, okay? However, if we let blood vessels touch that cancer, they're being fed, they're getting oxygen. And suddenly these little microscopic cancers can grow 16,000 times in only 2 weeks. So angiogenesis, harmful angiogenesis, is a trigger for cancer growth.
Yeah. So what are some of the foods that are anti-angiogenic that help the body to regulate these cells?
Right. So anti-angiogenesis is really just this idea you can help the body do what it wants to do, which is cut off the blood supply to these little tumors. Body does it pretty well. Obviously, in some people, it's not able to do it well enough, which is how people develop cancer. What can we do to help our body do this better? So whether you're a cancer patient and you're being treated, what can you do to help your body beat the odds? Or whether you're somebody who just doesn't want to get cancer and you want to help shore up that part of your body's health defense, there's a lot of foods that can actually do this. So one of my favorites are tomatoes. Okay. Tomatoes have a lot of mythology, urban
Show and tell here. Nice.
So tomatoes actually have a lot of urban legends. So people say, oh, tomatoes are members of nightshades and they've got lectins, and so they're harmful and don't eat them. All urban legend. Okay. I'm a scientist, so I go by data and evidence, and the evidence shows, and I've done some of the research myself, shows that tomatoes contain a bioactive, a natural chemical. That's a carotenoid. That's what makes tomatoes red and orange, that actually starves cancer by cutting off their blood supply. And studies of more than 30,000 people have shown that men eating 2 to 3 cups of cooked tomatoes a week. So, and each serving is only a half cup. So think about a half cup of tomato sauce. That's not a lot for your pasta. Okay. It's all you need. Lowers the risk of prostate cancer by about 30%. And for women, lowers the risk of breast cancer by about 20%. And what's interesting is that the lycopene is not just in a garden tomato. And you want to, and by the way, you want to cook it because heating it actually helps the chemical become in a form that your body can absorb more effectively. But you can even get tomato in other forms, like tomato paste, which I love to cook with. And then something I did recently, I brought to show your viewers, is tomato powder. So a lot of people haven't seen this, but you can order this online. Tomato powder, or organic tomato powder, and it is like a tomato bomb. If you actually have that flavor, you could actually put it on eggs. You could put it on. You can cook with it. You can, sprinkle it onto a salad. It's really an amazing way to actually get it. So tomatoes is one of those examples. And the reason I'm taking the time to explain this is we've gone from the food, the tomato, to the chemical that's inside it, to clinical data in humans to show that it's benefits, and then back to forms that we can actually buy and easily incorporate into our lives. And that's what's important in the type of food as medicine research that I do. It's, it's easy to just get on the soapbox and say, eat plant-based foods. I like to get specific because this is what people want. They want to know what, and then they want to know how.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. In Eat to Beat Disease, you talk about the 5 by 5 by 5 framework. The goal is to consume 5 different foods from the 5 defense systems you highlight, which include angiogenesis and cell regeneration, the microbiome, DNA protection, and immunity. And you suggest eating 5 foods from each system daily to encourage diversity in the diet. Can you explain a little bit more about the 5 by 5 by 5 framework and why it's so important to consume diverse amounts of plant foods?
So we talked about angiogenesis. That's one of our body's health defenses. Our stem cells allow us to regenerate from the inside out. This is another healing defense system. Our gut microbiome is so important because it lowers inflammation, helps our metabolism, helps us heal, and also helps us have mental wellness as well, because our gut's connected to our brain. It's the gut-brain axis. Our DNA protects us from the environment, damages from the environment. And our immune system is so critical because a little bit of inflammation is good for us. Too much is very damaging. And if we are too low in our immune defenses, we get sick, we get infected. Okay. And so all of these health defenses make the difference between whether we're healthy or we're sick. And so for me, my research basically shows if we eat to activate these health defenses, we're actually able to raise our shields on a daily basis using foods that we already like. And we've got 5 health defense systems. So every day, eat one food that actually activates each of the health defenses. And diversity, you mentioned diversity, is very, very important. Our bodies are hardwired to love diversity. Okay. So, like I always think about this, when you have a pet dog, we feed them the same kibble every day. Okay. But actually, our bodies really need that diversity. Our gut microbiome, our bacteria, they want to have as much and as different as possible every single day. So this is completely the antithesis of what you hear in these fad diets or fad superfood trends, where it's celery juice. Now just drink 5 gallons of celery juice and you're set all day. You're going to be super. Not true. If you eat 5 foods minimum, activate each of your health defenses, not only is your body going to thank you for the diversity, but your health defenses are going to protect you as well.
So when you say 5 foods, it seems to me that the foods that you're highlighting usually are plants, right? Usually we're talking about fruits and vegetables for the most part, along with maybe, I guess, chocolate. I don't know if that's a fruit or a vegetable or a legume or what, but there's a few others. But is that true, that essentially we're talking about that, like the superstars that we're talking about here are going to be whole plant foods?
Yeah, when you actually think about these foods that activate the health defenses, almost the entire universe is made up of plant-based foods. Now, plant-based foods are pretty broad. I mean, there are thousands of plants that we can actually eat. I think, most of us in America eat something like 25 or 26 types of plants in our whole lives, but there's a lot out there. And so I encourage people to get out there and explore. And the best way to explore these days is really just use Google. If you're curious about a plant that you've seen in the market and you haven't cooked with it, you don't have to buy it, but you can go on your phone and look it up and look for a video and learn all about it. And I encourage people to really, when they're shopping for produce, particularly now in the spring or summer, you're actually looking at this, abundance of farm fresh, market-based produce. Go ahead and explore. Something I love to do. I always tell people to make eating something that is pleasurable. Not only do you need to cook. I mean, some people used to say, well, I got to go to a restaurant to enjoy it. No, I think there's much more joy you can actually have for food. Make shopping an adventure. You're looking for something that's good for your health and align it with what your desires are for that day or that week. Make it also kind of an adventure and exploration. Foods that I don't recognize are the ones that are really interesting to me. I want to go check it out and see what it is that thing is. I went to the market the other day and I found a horn melon. Okay. I never knew what a horn melon was. And so I looked it up and I thought, oh, that's really interesting. It's insider green seeds. I want to buy it. And so when I bought it, I looked it up and it's an incredible source of vitamin C, ascorbic acid, which lowers inflammation. And so I learned something new and I tasted it. It was pretty good, and so this is actually how I encourage people to do it. Now, that said, not everybody is a vegan, okay? And not everybody is a vegetarian. I think it's really important to also embrace people who have make other life choices. Okay, because diversity also, by definition, allows you to eat other things as well. Seafood can be helpful. You talked about chocolate. Actually, cacao, from which chocolate is based, dark chocolate is largely cacao, is a plant-based food. So chocolate's a candy bar, which is a confection, but
Right.
actually cacao is actually a plant-based food with a ton of dietary fiber and polyphenols as well. But again, I think that a good rule of thumb, if it's a plant, if it's in a produce section, it probably activates your health defenses.
And that's pretty awesome, isn't it? And yet we're also talking about diversity, as you say. And, for somebody who is, still newer to eating a plant-rich diet, some of what you're saying is really helpful. Like literally go to the produce area and see what's there and learn and grow. And sometimes different markets have different kinds of options in that way. So it's just fascinating. And one of my favorite things, I love to go, I live out in the country a little bit. I love to go into the big cities where there's big Asian markets, for example, and just be wowed by all the things in the fruit and vegetable section. You can spend real time Googling, and my kids and I have done that, literally standing there in the aisle, learning about foods. And then we come home with a big shopping cart, and it can be really fun.
And then it gives you the excuse, the opportunity to go back to sample more and to try different things. And the other thing that I think can be take down the intimidation factor for people, because I think that's a big deal. It's like, people, when you hear about a plant-based meal and you're not, I'm not ready to go vegan yet, and it's not how I grew up. You know what? Don't worry. It's a lot easier than that. If you take a vegetable, like here, I'll show you one right now. Here's one from an Asian market. This is bok choy. All right. It's easy. You cut off the base of it. Okay, here's the base, cut it off. And now you've got all these little leaves that go across. They're super easy. You cut them up, you can saute them. The key thing is you can watch a video like bok choy and look up a video of how to cook it. And someone will, in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, teach you how to cook it and make it really, really enticing to do it yourself. Yeah. And so I think this is one of the advantages of our modern age is like, you don't need to go to cooking culinary school to actually learn how to do this. All you got to do is have a mobile phone that can access the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, bok choy is awesome, by the way. It's so tender and soft, and it's a nutrient superstar. I mean, it rivals kale and collards and cabbage for its nutrient density.
And it's got a lot of dietary fiber. So it's one of those foods that I call a grand slammer, which is that a single food activates all your health defenses all at the same time. It's kind of a very efficient way to activate your health defenses.
And if you eat a little bit raw, you also get sulforaphane out of it, which is awesome too. Will, you mentioned in Eat to Beat Disease that one secret to longevity is consuming healthy bacteria through fermented foods. A lot of people these days are taking probiotic supplements and hoping to achieve the same or greater benefit because they're getting so many microbes, presumably, in that supplement. But we also hear some controversy. Number one, probiotic supplements may be colonizing with just one strain, whereas fermented foods may bring you a huge diversity of strains, which can be more beneficial. And also, we're not actually sure, just because you put it in your mouth, that it's getting down in there where it needs to go without being neutralized by stomach acids. Can you shed any light on this debate? What kinds of fermented foods work? And particularly, are probiotics useful or just a waste of money?
Yeah, well, so let's go back and look at fermented foods. The history of fermented foods is really interesting. So about 4,000 years ago, there was this road, this path that connected Asia, China, to the Mediterranean called the Silk Road. Dusty path, caravans with camels passed on it. And basically when food was actually transported along this path, in order to be able to keep it viable food, a lot of the food was fermented. Okay, fermenting food, by the way, anybody can actually do this. If you chop up vegetables like cabbage, for example, and you put it in salt water and you expose it to the air, and lo and behold, all the healthy bacteria, there's bacteria in the air, will settle onto this, onto the water, the bath that the chopped up vegetables are in, and then you close it up. Okay, and you just walk away. And there are ways that you can learn how to do fermenting at home. But what happens is that bacteria grow. That sounds kind of disgusting. Okay, but actually what happens is really quite amazing. If you follow directions, good bacteria will grow, overgrow, and take command over the bad bacteria, which would then go away. And then you actually have this broth of great bacteria. So what does it produce? It produces sauerkraut. It produces kimchi. It produces lots and lots of other things. I mean, if you eat dairy, yogurt can be made that way as well, and even cheeses. But let's talk about plant-based stuff. And even pickles can actually be a probiotic food. I'm really kind of a food first approach to actually eating, getting bacteria into your gut. You get a diversity of bacteria. It tastes great, interesting flavors. It's just a more natural way to do it. I'm not against probiotics. I think some probiotics are really interesting. I can tell you I've got a probiotic here that I think is called Lactobacillus reuteri. It's actually something that is important in the gut that actually helps your immunity. Not everybody has it. So, and it's hard to actually get outside of a probiotic, except for like having sourdough bread and some other cheeses. But if you're a vegan, you might not actually be eating that. So that's where a probiotic might be helpful. The interesting thing about the key thing is really to get our gut bacteria, our ecosystem to be helpful. It's more than just one bacteria. So for people that sort of try, I think it's an understandable desire to oversimplify. Hey, doc, just give me that one. I just want a magic bullet, please.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I don't have to think about it. Well, life's not that simple. Our body is really complex and our body loves to be fed. So what I would say is sort of like if you shift gears and you think about how to enjoy your food, I would add fermented foods to be one of those ways of really getting, that's how use food as your probiotic would be the best way.
Got it. Thank you so much for that. Dan Buettner has done research and coined the term the blue zones, areas of the world that have the longest life expectancy, including Loma Linda, California, Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, and Icaria, Greece. Now, some of the common traits these areas share, they all have some of the healthiest and longest lived traditional peoples in the world. They tend to base their diet around lots and lots of plant foods, like legumes and fruits and vegetables. They have plenty of activity. They have generally a sense of community or purpose, and they have forms of stress reduction or contemplation or faith that help bring them together. One lifestyle trait they all have in common is the amount of food they eat. In Japan, they practice something called, it's called harahachi, or harihachi-bu, I guess. It's a reminder to stop eating when you're 80% full to prevent overeating. Other areas practice intermittent fasting, either for religious reasons or during the workday. And food quantity is something you also talk about. What do you think are the benefits of limiting total calories? And what should people know about intermittent fasting so it's not like dieting or starvation or restrictive eating? What's the difference?
Right. Well, let's just bring it back to sort of something everyone will relate to, right? If you're like me, some days are super busy. So you get up and like you're already behind by the time you got dressed, right? And so you're racing around. Those are the days that I might not have time for breakfast. Sometimes I'm racing around. I don't even have time for lunch. Okay. I usually make time for dinner. But so there are times where we just don't have time to sit down and have a proper meal. And when we were kids, we were always told by our parents and our teachers, like, no, that's really bad. Breakfast is the most important meal. You need to have 3 square meals a day. All of those were sort of like these 1950s outdated concepts on based on the understanding of the time. And now we know, in fact, it's okay to skip a meal or two. It might even be healthy to skip a meal or two over the course of a week. And when you skip a meal or two, it's called fasting. Now it's relative fasting. Fasting doesn't mean that you're dumped on an island like Tom Hanks and you're starving. Okay. But fasting means that you're letting your body not be deprived, but you're letting your body reboot itself, kind of take a little load off your body's metabolism, so it can actually kind of get back to its baseline and refill itself, reboot it actually itself. So calories that we might stuff in, okay, that actually overloads the engine. I always sort of give people an analogy. Well, what do you mean by overeating? Like, what does that mean, right? Like, is there like, how many bites do I need to have? Not that simple. Think about overeating like if you were filling up your car, if you still drive a car that uses gas, you take the nozzle from the pump and you put it into the gas, you put it into the car, and you fill up the tank, right? What happens normally? Tank fills up and it clicks, and then you stop filling up the gas, you put it back. Now, what happens if you just kept on filling it, overfilling it? The gas tank is full, now it's still pouring in gas to the cat. What's going to happen? It's going to overflow. It's going to come out of the gas, it's going to run down the side of the car, around the wheels, around your feet. Now it's a hazard. So think about overeating, stuffing yourself, eating till you're full as a hazard, because it's really every time at every meal, eating till you're full actually overloads our system. So fasting or intermittent fasting, which is just a variation on fasting, it's just a shorter period of fasting, actually allows your body to reboot, reset. It's a simple way of actually thinking about it. From a scientific perspective, it's a lot more complex than that, but I will start by saying it allows all 5 of your health defense systems to reset. It's kind of like the fuse box. When every time you intermittently fast, it's like clicking the fuse box and re-switching it on, and now the whole system's rebooted.
It almost sounds like there's two different things here, and one is how full do you fill the gas tank, and the other is how much do you use your gas before you refill. And we know that certain batteries, for example, to get away from the gas metaphor for a moment, certain batteries actually do better when they get more deeply discharged rather than always hovering near the top, because that stretches them out and elongates their life expectancy. So it sounds like partly you're talking about actually allowing yourself to go through those ups and downs where you actually have an empty stomach sometimes, which is what kind of intermittent fasting is about. And then the other piece is, as I'm hearing it, not wanting to overfill. And when you say eat till full, well, maybe we get used to a feeling of fullness that's actually stuffed, where your stomach is actually being pushed bigger by all the food that's in there, rather than just being naturally filled. Maybe we can learn that what we think of as 80% full is actually going to feel very satisfying when we stop equating satisfaction with bursting. Would you agree?
Right. No, completely. And actually the biology tells us as food is loaded into our stomach, put into our stomach, actually our stomach and our gut actually releases hormones to our brain. Okay. These are hunger hormones that will shut off our appetite. So if you eat slowly, your body will naturally control the amount of food you eat by making you less hungry. If you actually eat quickly, you can eat faster than your stomach will actually respond from a biochemical perspective, and then you can really stuff it. It's kind of like stuffing your laundry bag. If you stuff it as fast as you can, you'll get a pretty full one. Okay. But if you actually stuff a little slower and you take the time to look at it, you're like, okay, let me take it down to the washing machine now. So again, take your time to eat. Think about how much you're eating. Be conscious, be mindful that you don't want to stuff yourself to the gills. That's overloading. And in fact, skipping a meal or two, you feel hungry. Actually, as you pointed out, Ocean, it's a great analogy. You're just letting your body burn the fuel down. It's like the battery that's healthier if you let it run all the way down before you charge it all up again.
Thank you. I want to ask you about the swap meat study. This was a study in which 36 men and women were tracked. And for the first 8 weeks, half the group ate at least 2 servings a day of Beyond Meat, which is a plant-based meat alternative. For the second 8 weeks, the same group switched to 2 servings of red meat each day. And then the other group, the other half of the people, started with eating meat for the first 8 weeks and then switched to plant-based meat for the second 8 weeks. And the researchers were looking primarily at TMAO, which is a metabolite that forms in the gut after eating meat and eggs. And it's been associated strongly with higher risk of heart disease and cancer. They also were looking at LDL cholesterol and weight. And the results showed that there was decreased TMAO when the subjects ate plants after meat, but no change in TMAO when the subjects ate plants and then meat. And this suggested that the plant-based diet might have had a protective effect when the subjects were eating the meat after they had eaten the plant-based foods for 8 weeks. So subjects in both groups lost weight and lowered their LDL cholesterol while they were in the plant-based phase. And we know that some of these plant-based meat alternatives can be a substitute for meat protein, but they can also be high in sodium and saturated fat from processed oils. And for that reason, we don't call these meat alternatives health foods, but they might offer something that meat and dairy and eggs do not contain, and that's fiber. In the SWAP study, fiber was the one significant nutritional difference between the meat and the plant group, with the plant-based group consuming a lot more fiber due to the fiber that was in these plant-based meats. Will, do you think that fiber might have played an important part in decreasing TMAO and weight and LDL? And can you speak to the overall role of fiber in prevention of lifestyle diseases, since less than 5% of the US population gets the recommended amount of it?
Yeah, well, so this all goes back to our body's hardwired health defenses. Our gut microbiome is one of those defenses, and what we feed our gut microbiome will actually make it thank us or hate us, actually, our gut bacteria. And so red meat actually is a kind of a burden, a strain on our gut bacteria. It changes our gut bacteria as quickly as 24 hours later. Okay, so, and because red meat can be metabolized and it generates these TMAOs that we know are not that healthful. In fact, they look like, research suggests that they're actually harmful, maybe even carcinogens. It's one of those important linkers to help us understand why cutting down or cutting out red meat is actually a good idea, particularly for people who are worried about diseases like cancer or who just want to optimize their health. Now, our gut bacteria by itself thrives when you feed it fiber. And so plant-based foods, including ultra-processed foods like Beyond Meats that actually do load up fiber into your body, actually help our gut bacteria get more of what they want. They do get the fiber. And then that fiber actually then helps metabolize and do what it likes to do, including lower or decrease the amounts of detectable TMAO. For example, in this, I think it's a very elegant study of what they actually did. Now, it would be interesting if they had a third arm or in the study, which would be a third group where you just actually looked at pure dietary fiber from plants. So if you had a vegan diet, for example, that would have been a really, really good comparison as well. But, one of the challenging things about doing these clinical trials, these clinical studies, is really being able to get and manage enough people and to run the study in a remarkable, in a rigorous sort of way. So I think that swap meat study is a setup to actually do a next study that would actually start to compare the different ways of getting dietary fiber in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what if people had done 16 weeks on the plant foods? And then what if they had other plant foods that weren't Beyond Meat, but that were actually, more, we could say, nutrient dense than that even, but it is fascinating. Now I want to talk about another study on polyphenols. The Southern Community Cohort study looked at polyphenol intake and the incidence of colorectal cancer in over 71,000 people from the southeastern United States. And they found that higher polyphenol intake was significantly associated with a decrease in risk of colon cancer. Will, can you explain how you think these nutrients that are found only in plants might lower cancer risk? And also, what foods are the highest in polyphenols?
Right. Well, okay. Again, brings it right back to our health defenses. So basically, colorectal cancer is one of those cancers that if we deprive it of a blood supply, even if they form, they'll never become dangerous. So if you have a good angiogenesis system, eating anti-angiogenic foods, green tea is an example of a food that has a lot of polyphenols, but lots of other plant-based foods also have polyphenols that can actually have an anti-angiogenic cancer-starving effect, including for colorectal cancer. Remember, I told you about immunity. Your good, strong immune system actually also allows your immune system to wipe out those microscopic cancers. And if you can actually eat some foods with polyphenols that wipe out cancer stem cells, okay, that will be another way of erasing cancers that might be forming in your gut, in your colon. And a healthy microbiome lowers inflammation. And we know that colon cancer actually is a highly inflammatory cancer, and polyphenols decrease inflammation, but they also help feed the gut. The plant fibers feed the gut to actually also lower inflammation. And of course, DNA mutations contribute to the formation of cancer. So antioxidants, which many polyphenols are, which come from plant-based foods, are another way of actually activating our health defenses. So to me, the results of this Southern Community Cohort study actually make a lot of sense because they're eating mostly plant-based foods that actually can help to shore up the immune system and all those other health defenses, the other four other health defenses, as a way of helping the body repel cancer. Now, what I think is really interesting is that many of the individuals were low income or African American. And I think that's actually a really useful thing because, you know, the disparities in cancer and in healthcare are so wide ranging across not just our country, but in different countries as well, but especially noticeable in our country, in the United States. I think the more that we can help other people realize it doesn't matter where you live. You can eat foods that are actually good for you, no matter what what part of the country what your zip code is, you can still do it. And I think that's one of the amazing things about polyphenols. I mean, mostly plant-based foods, colorful foods are particularly great for polyphenols. But again, I try not to prescribe one food to say this is a superfood you should eat. I mean, you know, colorful bell peppers are a great one, but they're not nearly the only ones. And I think fruits and vegetables, herbs, and legumes are all equally great sources of polyphenols.
Yes, thank you for that. Now I want to talk a little bit about longevity. There was a recent study in the Public Library of Sciences. Researchers found that adding more plant-based foods to the plate can make a positive impact on longevity, on life expectancy. And they actually found that no matter what your age, you can make changes and get results. And particularly, they were looking at things like legumes and whole grains and fruits and vegetables, and found that you know, the earlier in life you incorporate more of them, the more positive impact you get. But you can make changes at any stage. Will, I'm curious your take on the research on foods and longevity. Is it pretty much the same formulas, the same things that help fight cancer are also good for life expectancy? And any particular thoughts on why you think some of these foods help people live longer?
Yeah, well, when it comes to longevity, you know, I think that, you know, I have both a scientific, a clinical, and also a philosophical approach. Let's start with the philosophy first, which is, look, we all want to live as long as we can, but the most important part of our life is we want to actually live a fulfilling, enjoyable life. All right. And so nobody wants to live life in a jail or a cage for a long period of time. And that applies to how we approach our food as well. And that's why it's so important to me that we align the foods that we enjoy eating, foods that give us joy. We feel pleasure from eating our foods, with the principles of longevity, with the principles of fighting cancer, with the principles of anti-inflammation, frankly, with the principle of eating to beat disease, which is what I've been writing about. I think that if we can actually use those principles to activate our health defenses, guess what? Mostly plant-based foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, you name it. And some of the beverages also count. So you talk about plant-based beverages, which are tea and even coffee. Those are also things that have been associated with activating our health defenses. If we have stronger health defenses, we're less likely to have disease. If we have less disease, we're likely to live longer. But at the very specific level, when it comes to longevity, you can even study it at the cellular level. So those of us who are researchers look at the human cell, and you know, we might look wrinkly in the mirror, but actually, if you actually even look at the single cell level, those cells actually also age. Our cells age. 40 trillion cells, they all are getting older as well. So what do we look for in a cell for aging? We look at something called telomeres. These are the caps at the end of our chromosomes, our genetic material. And the faster they burn down, okay, think about it as a protective cap. The faster the fuse burns down, the faster you're aging. So when you have plant-based foods, what's very clear is that you can actually slow down the burning of the fuse, which slows down cellular aging, which means that we actually get to live more longer, better lives at the cellular level, which is really, really important and very achievable.
Two of the things that have been shown to increase telomere length include coffee and also foods that are really rich in carotenoids. Can you tell us what's so special about coffee and carotenoids in this way?
Well, yeah. So again, this is really the stuff of researchers. In coffee, you actually have a lot of hundreds of bioactives, maybe thousands of bioactives, but the one that's been best studied is called chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid is also found in apples and pears and other foods. So again, Mother Nature is really clever. She will put good stuff in a lot of different things to give us diversity to actually eat. But chlorogenic acid actually slows down the burn of telomeres. So we slows down cellular aging. So studies have shown when you drink coffee, up to 3 cups a day or so, you actually slow down your cellular, the rate at which your cells age. Same thing as carotenoids. Carotenoids actually will slow down the burn rate of the telomeres. And part of the way the carotenoids do this is by their antioxidant activity as well, prevent damage to our DNA. Think about our DNA as a I don't know, like a piece of glass on a hailstorm, and the hail that's coming in that's banging on the glass. Most of it's not going to break the glass, but every now and then, if you get enough hits, you're actually going to damage. You're going to break the glass. And so, what antioxidants does is block the hail, neutralize the hail, so you have less hits on the glass. And that's another way that carotenoids can actually protect our DNA.
Thank you so much. Will, in your practice, you focus not just on what the foods are, but actually looking at how an individual responds to food. Because at the end of the day, just because the study says that something's good for most people most of the time doesn't mean it's good for all people all the time. Each of us is unique. We're the only us on the planet, and we have our own unique microbiome, our own health history, our own genetic predispositions, life stage, et cetera, et cetera. How in your practice do you determine how an individual is going to respond to certain foods? What are some of the indicators you look for assessing some of the nuances of individual experience?
This actually speaks to a general principle in healthcare, which is that we're moving away from this sort of cookbook, cookie cutter approach to treating patients, with a disease, to really trying to understand how each individual is experiencing their disease, how their body actually, where their body is in their health journey, or even in their disease journey. And what do we need to do to meet the individual wherever they are in their journey? It's very different from how medical doctors are taught. You write the same prescription at the same dose to the same person for the same amount of time. Not necessarily so. And so taking this very personalized approach is really important. When it comes to food and health, I actually start speaking to patients first, before I get into all the scientific mumbo jumbo. I actually want to ask them, what do they enjoy? I want to have just a really, really open and authentic discussion about, there's no judgment here. Tell me what you love to eat. And, and I'll keep on asking them in different ways. And before long, you'll find that they actually enjoy eating certain things that are really healthy. And then what I try to do is to go start with the things that they enjoy eating that's healthy, to use that as an anchor point to take them further, to say, I'm glad that you really like to eat apples, or I'm glad you really love to eat kumquats, whatever it may be, because these are the benefits. And, you can actually develop a better dialogue with an individual that way. And I think so. Big picture is not the formula. What's my formula for approaching this? But really, how do we build the right connection in having this conversation? And then I think that, having the right knowledge base that is not cluttered with mythology. Remember, we talked about the tomatoes and the nightshades and the soy and the phytoestrogens. There's so much urban legends that's out there on food and health. I do think that it's important for those of us who actually are providing advice or guidance or knowledge to patients, and sharing knowledge, that we're trying to provide them information that just doesn't confirm what they heard on the internet. What we want to do is to give them resources they can trust. And ideally, those resources are science-based. And then at that point, if you got what the person's need are, and then you've got the science, all right, now you can kind of get creative to figure out what it is that they need. Where do they live? What can they get? What can they afford? what's practical for them. All those are ways, like I think that I approach this anyway. Yes, plant-based, you can recite the herbs and vegetables and legumes and nuts and seeds, you can recite all that stuff. Okay. Except that I think that what I have found is that when you actually talk to somebody and have a real conversation about what motivates them, what do they enjoy, that's the most effective way to change people's behavior.
Well, I love that because you're building confidence. A lot of us think we have broken pickers, and because we've been seduced by all the junk foods, but we know the difference, or at least our bodies do, I think, between foods that love us back and foods that don't, and if we can learn to cultivate a sense of deeper trust in our own inner wisdom, recognize, oh, wow, I've been drawn to this food and it's good for me. How can I cultivate and build on that? Then we're not shaming ourselves into a sort of behavioral change. We're actually expanding on what is already innately present. And that, I think, is a recipe for success long-term. So I love that. Thank you, Will. The same's true with exercise, right? People ask me, oh, is it better to run or hike or dance? And I'm like, whatever gets you going, like not all bodies are the same. And so some people are moved by one thing or another thing. Some people love racquetball. Some people hate it. Some people love slow walks meditatively. Some people can't stand that. They need to go brisk. So finding your essence pace, your own flow is wonderful. And of course, the same's true with food. I want to get real quick. We don't have a lot of time left here, but I want to get real quick, see if we can do a lightning round of a few of the questions from our Whole Life Club members and see if you can at least provide some quick feedback here. Pretam asks, what's a good brand of dark chocolates?
Well, okay. So first of all, the two principles I think we want to do is we're not trying to advertise or promote a brand, and we're also really not trying to give medical advice. And a lot of questions are naturally about specific medical conditions. So I'm going to try to be as fair as possible. I don't think it matters what brand of chocolate you get, but I think what matters is the higher percent of cacao. Dark chocolate is better than milk chocolate. Darker is even better than less dark. So 85% is a good way to aim. And when it comes to chocolate, you have to understand that the word chocolate refers to a confection. That's a manufactured sweet with a lot of things added to it. So think about, like, I don't know, the quintessential is one of these, bars that we used to get for Halloween in our, that we're in our bag that we used to trick or treat in. You open one of those tear open of a wrapper and you bite into it and it's filled with all this gooey, delicious stuff that evokes childhood, but most of that stuff is added sugar, chemicals, preservatives, unhealthy fats, just stuff that you don't really want. So today, what you want to do is to look for minimally sweetened, or naturally sweetened dark chocolate. It's okay if you don't want just pure bitter chocolate. I will tell you that, I was invited to collaborate with one group called Vosges Au Chocolat. You can find them online. And they were interested in doing a pure plant only. So it's like a vegan brand of chocolates, only with no added sugar. And I thought that was an interesting challenge to actually go for. But I don't think the brand matters. I think that it's more important that you just understand what the core concept is.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I'm a big proponent of fair trade and organic, because there's slavery in the chocolate industry in parts of the world and very poor working conditions. But if it's fair trade, you're getting away from that. And organic also means that the environment was treated better. And there are some that are sweetened with stevia or erythritol or other things, which I think has some benefits over sugar. Beth asked, she said, very excited to hear the interview with Dr. Lee. My question is, how can we balance our thyroid hormone through diet, or what foods might be helpful? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's such that's a medical question. And it's very individualistic, because there's so many reasons that one's thyroid might be working or not working. And so I think that, the reality is that, if you have a thyroid dysfunction, the first thing is to actually work it out with your regular medical doctor to figure out what the underlying cause is. So I think that, it's too easy to go straight for the food part to say, what kind of food can fix my thyroid problem? I think it really depends on what it's caused by.
Yeah, thank you. Sheila asked, are there any food suggestions for high-risk factor osteoporosis? Any foods that should be consumed to help increase bone density?
One of the things about building bone is calcium and vitamin D. Now there aren't a lot of foods that actually contain vitamin D, but one of my favorites are actually mushrooms, and mushrooms do contain vitamin D that can be activated by sunlight. So there's a couple of factors, that I think that you want to think about. You want to have calcium in your diet. You want to actually have vitamin D in your diet. If you're plant-based, mushrooms are one example of a food that actually can give you vitamin D. A lot of people don't know this, but mushrooms, you know how for skin, to get advantage of vitamin D, you want to be in sunlight, right? So you get exposed to sunlight, and that activates vitamin D. But did you know that with mushrooms, if you slice them and you expose the mushrooms to sunlight, they will also build up their vitamin D as well. So it's a little trick. If you want to actually take your mushrooms, want to slice them up, okay? Before you eat them, you put them on a plate, flat, exposed, and you just put them by the windowsill to let the sun shine on them. You actually build up more vitamin D in the mushroom itself. So obviously, osteoporosis, high risk. I mean, there's a lot of things that converge into that. That's also a medical issue. But I would say that just remember, to build strong bones, you need calcium and you need vitamin D in order to keep adding strength to your bone.
Yeah, thank you. And then I'll also like to recommend people consider adding K2 as well, along with vitamin D, because they seem to work together quite well. And K2 is mostly going to be something you'll get in supplement form. It's in certain animal products. It's also in natto and some fermented foods in smaller quantities. Thanks, Will. We're almost out of time here. So in a moment here, we're going to be making a transition. I just want to say, for everybody who's been thinking, maybe I've been eating too badly for too long, or is it too late for me? I want to make one thing super clear. The less healthfully you've eaten so far in your life, the more you have to gain by moving in a healthier direction. And the microbes in your gut have very fast reproductive cycles, which means that they can proliferate and flourish and bring you tremendous benefits very quickly when you begin to apply what you're learning here today. And speaking of applying what you're learning, in a couple of moments here, we're going to make a transition so I can tell you more about Whole Life Club, which is Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community for helping you sustain and optimize your healthy lifestyle. And the door is open to the public just twice a year. And this week, for a few more days, is the last time this year. So please stay on if you want to learn more about this incredible opportunity. But first, I want to say, Will, thank you so much again for your decades of research, for your brilliant insights, for your fantastic book, for all of your work with the Eat to Beat initiative, and for being with us today. It's been a true honor and pleasure to share this time with you.
Thank you, Ocean.
All righty. So we're going to let Will go now. Thanks again, Will. And now we're going to make our transition. So please stay on if you want to learn more about Whole Life Club and how you can take action to get results in your life. If you're already a member, there's no need to keep watching because you already know how great it is. But if you're not, and if you're interested in maybe taking some steps to land the plane and to really make this happen in your life, then keep watching because this is an incredible opportunity. My dad and colleague, John Robbins, and I started Whole Life Club because we were sick and tired of seeing so many people get inspired and get motivated, but then over time, they'd run out of steam, they fall back on old habits, and it's understandable. We live in a toxic food culture all around us. Junk food and unhealthy habits and the mass proliferation of fake news and fake facts and conflicts of interest are abounding. And so we wanted to help people to find a simple, clear, steady path to keep making progress day in and day out. Because at the end of the day, it isn't what you do in a day or even what you think is possible that shapes your destiny. It's not your willpower that shapes your destiny. It's your habits. It's what you do on autopilot. And so our goal is to help people move from confusion to clarity, and from ideas and possibilities to action and to optimization. So maybe you're already doing a lot of great stuff. Maybe you're already eating super healthy, but you're not getting all the results you want. And there might be a missing link. There might be a missing nutrient. There might be a missing strategy that you haven't yet found out how to apply in your life. So our goal is to keep bringing the wisdom, bringing the experts, and providing the support to help you get steady, consistent, positive habit change. And what's needed now, at the end of the day, isn't more data. It's more clarity. What's needed now isn't more possibility, it's more results. And we created Whole Life Club to give you that steady and solid and consistent wind at your back to keep empowering your journey forward. Every single month in Whole Life Club, we've got a theme. It's like a course. And some of our past themes have been on topics like brain health or heart health or anti-cancer living, blood sugar balance, how to boost your energy levels, or gut health, or to quiet down excess inflammation. Every single month, you get an action hour with a guest expert, including the chance to submit your questions for those action hours. You get a transcript, you get an action checklist, and then you get specific resources like action of the week videos and weekly messages with specific micro steps you can take to keep making progress towards your goals. And when you join Whole Life Club, you also get recipes, like amazing, fantastic recipes. So we have a library of over 500 from our first few years, and you can sort them by region or cuisine or specific ingredients or allergens. So you can find exactly the things you do and don't want in your recipes. And then every single week, you get 5 more recipes to help highlight powerful, delicious, whole foods, plant-based resources so you can keep making progress and loving the journey. When you join, you get our entire library. You don't just get the new content that comes out every single week indefinitely into the future. You also get all of our library of past content of recipes and action hours and action of the week videos and action checklists and other simple resources to help you on your path. And you get community. And this is really, really big because, in a toxic food culture, it's easy to feel alone or isolated or lost or separated out. And we want to help you feel a sense of belonging, a sense of folks who will champion you, who will celebrate your victories, who will hold you accountable when you're struggling, who will answer your questions. And all of the community is moderated by our team of health coaches and nutritionists and dietitians. So you can get real prompt, useful resources and insights. And one of the top things we do is actually link you to articles on our website. If you go to foodrevolution.org, you can find them, but we link you specifically because we've got over 1,000 articles on critical topics. So often when people ask questions, we've already got an in-depth analysis on that specific topic, and we can send you right there and point you right to the resources that will help you, as well as the latest research. We stay on top of the medical journals and the studies and the research that's coming out so we can help you get answers and understand what's going on and make sense of new discoveries and implement them for results in your life. This week, we're holding a series of action hours. There was the one a couple days ago with dietitian Brenda Davis. Now, of course, we're here today. On Wednesday, we'll be on with Rich Roll. And to celebrate this series, as well as the Food Revolution Summit we completed earlier this month, we are opening the doors right now to Whole Life Club so you can register directly for what will be the last time for direct entry in 2022. And this is an incredible opportunity that expires in just a few days. So recently, I got to talk with one of our members, Jean from New Jersey, and she shared what it meant to her to have been part of Whole Life Club. And I really want to let you know about this because it's so moving every time I hear these stories. So she wanted to share what it meant with you as well. And here's the video of what Whole Life Club has meant for Jean. Let's roll the tape. So what's your name and where are you from?
My name is Jean and I'm from New Jersey.
And when you joined Whole Life Club, and prior to that, what were some of the health and or food challenges you were struggling with, and how did that impact your life?
I think my health journey, and it's been a journey, started when I went to the doctor and got a very bad cholesterol report. This was one time, and I was shocked to see that the doctor immediately took out a pad and wanted to write me a prescription for the rest of my life to be on statins. Well, that didn't sit well with me, so I left and tried to remediate my health myself. And I did very well. Within 5 months, I went back for another checkup, and my report was perfect. So you see, I could have gone down a very slippery slope, which would not have been at all good for my health. And that came at a time, there was sort of a convergence of several factors. I came across forks over knives, which I think was transformational. I was so surprised at what I learned there. And then I came across the Food Revolution Summit and really just soaked that all up. That led to a host of docuseries on health. After the Food Revolution Summit, I determined that my husband and I would be eating plant-based meals every other day. And then when I had all that head knowledge, it was, life gets in the way. It was difficult to implement on a steady course. And plus, I'm the only one of my friends and acquaintances who had that knowledge. And therefore, I really didn't have support among the people that I see every day. So my mind was flooded with information, but I needed implementation. And that's why when you introduced Whole Life Club, I immediately jumped on it. I think I was probably the first person to sign up. And that's been just wonderful experience for me.
What have you most gotten out of Whole Life Club? What's been most valuable to you in it?
Well, it's first of all, it strengthens my resolve. It equips me with tools, and the tools are so useful to me personally in my busy life. I love the fact that there's so many aspects to improving our health. It's not only the sleep, the quality of the sleep that we get, but the exercise, not just what we put in our mouths, but the cosmetics, the toothpaste, the dish soap that we use. Where do you start with all of that? It's overwhelming. But in Whole Life Club, I'm getting little sound bites from you each week. And they're definitely easy. Who doesn't have 10 minutes to listen to this week's video? Everyone does. And, you give the presentation. It's grounded in science. You give the explanation, and then you give the challenge. And that's what I love about it. It sort of comes to me in sound bites, which fits into my busy life. I love the recipes. Now, I've often asked myself, why didn't I just go out and get a recipe book on plant-based eating? I don't know why. But when I look forward to those 5 or 6 recipes every week, I have trained myself to download a couple of them and make sure that I implement 1 or 2 that week. It makes it easy for me because it's coming at me in manageable amounts. And let's see what else. I love first of all, about the recipes. I love that there are hints there about making them gluten-free, about making them dairy-free. So that helps me when I'm entertaining friends who have certain dietary needs. And I love that I found out about new foods. I had never heard of farro before. I never knew what that was. I never knew there were so many beans. Brownies made out of beans. This is all learning, and I'm enjoying expanding my eating repertoire. And I have my favorite recipes are let's see, I have them right here. Loaded sweet potato bowl, love it. Farro, butternut, squash salad. Can't wait. We're all salivating for it. Very good. I love the fact that you have the interviews and that I can watch them at my leisure. I don't always have time for an hour to listen attentively, but when I do want to watch, they're available. Or if I want to rewatch, I love that. And I also love that the social platform that you've chosen is something other than Facebook. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with Facebook, and I wouldn't, shall we say, post as willingly if it were Facebook. So it's an affordable way for me to maintain a consistency in my journey to better health. And I just love the fact that it's, like I said, sound bites. It fits into my schedule.
That's so great to hear. When you look at where you are in your health journey now, if you were to summarize some of the things that have improved, or shifted and what that means to you, what would you say?
Oh, it means a lot to me. It sort of has, it almost has become my number one focus in my free time. So knowing what I did about how if I hadn't uh, declined a life of statin drugs, I don't have a lot of, I want to take control of my own health. I don't want someone else making decisions for me, doctor or no doctor, because I found that most doctors want to write a prescription. I don't even take a pill, an aspirin. I don't think I've had an aspirin in a year. I don't want drugs. I don't want prescriptions. I want to heal myself naturally. And now I feel so empowered to do that. From what I've learned from Food Revolution Summit that you and your dad have run, and reading your book, and this a Whole Life Club, the information that you've given. You know, 1 week it's protein, another week it's calcium. It's okay. I can handle it 1 week at a time, and I love knowing it for myself so that I can be my own advocate.
Wonderful. Thank you. If you were to say one thing to somebody who's thinking about joining Whole Life Club, what would you tell them?
Do it. You'll never regret it. Maximize your health. That's the most important thing we have. So you're a small investment in your life. Certainly the most valuable thing you can do for yourself. Skip a day at the spa or whatever else you would spend your money on. This is ongoing, sustainable, long-lasting, and I think so good for me personally. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Jean for sharing those inspiring words. I am so moved by her courage and her moving example of what's possible. And the truth is, we hear stories like this almost every day, and it always means so much. And now I want to say this to you. I don't know what your story is or what it will be, but if you are feeling inspired, like you want to implement some of what you're learning, if you want to keep making progress and sustaining and optimizing long-term, then right now is an incredible opportunity for you to step forward. The doors are open for a very special limited time this week only to join Whole Life Club for just $1 for your first month. After that, it's $99 a year, which is an incredible price and more than 60% savings, with a price that will not go up as long as you keep your membership active, even when we raise the rates for everybody else. So right now you can get in and you can take advantage of this incredible opportunity. And this might be the best dollar you'll ever spend in your entire life. I'm not kidding. So make sure to join us on Wednesday for the next action hour in this series. And if you already know you want to jump in, this is your time right now to take advantage of this incredible opportunity and join us for just $1. Whatever you decide, I want to say that I wish you health and vitality and wellness and joy in every cell of your body. I hope you'll join us Wednesday with Rich Roll for a focus on optimizing your health for peak performance. This is such a fun week. I'm loving sharing it with all of you. And if you're interested in joining Whole Life Club, now is a great time to do it. I hope to see you there, and I look forward to working with you for a real food revolution. Let's do this. When it comes to cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic illness, what really matters isn't how many books you read, how many webinars you attend, or how much you know. What really matters at the end of the day is what you eat and how you live. The science has given us what we need to know. Now it's time for action. It's time to implement and optimize your healthy lifestyle. It's time to get results. It's time to say goodbye to confusion and hello to clarity. It's time to say goodbye to bad habits and hello to good ones. It's time to fall in love with foods that love you back. It's time to join a community that will support you in achieving your goals. It's time for Whole Life Club. Click the link to find out more and to join in now.